We tired of this shit, man. Color-coded tribalism got the whole world stuck on a cycle of endless injustice after injustice after injustice. And it's starting to really piss me off. I can tell you this. Black people tired of it because we didn't ask to be black. We were a bunch of Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Mende, Wolof, Akan peoples who was taken and thrown into a context of black. And we was like, well, I guess we black compared to y'all. But that context meant that we would be denied resources and the ability to survive. So we find out of it, then get called reverse racist because we want out of that system, right? White people are tired of it because they sick of being on the offensive end of history. Always the aggressor, always the oppressor, always the privileged, entitled, oblivious other, right? Can't make a critical observation about another group of people without being called some kind of Nazi or white supremacist. And that's getting sickening to them. I know that brown people is real sick of racism because they remember when all this shit was theirs. If you American, Latino and indigenous people have a very acute memory of this being stolen from them and a bullshit line being drawn, and they're sitting up there made foreigners on their own soil. And as far as they're concerned, a lot of them like, all y'all get the hell out, right? So what do we do about this racism? Well, the first way to overcome racism is to acknowledge that racism and race is a lie. It's bullshit. It's a fabrication. It is literally a group superstition. But like any group superstition, if a group of people have one superstition, that group of people can be incredibly dangerous, i.e. the Salem witch trials, right? Now, just because it's an illusion doesn't mean that it doesn't have a physical reality. There is a physical reality to race. And that reality can be like more than skin deep sometimes. Like it can be like musculoskeletal. It can have something to do with genetically inherited memories. But neurologically, and therefore spiritually, human beings are too close to one another to have one group be inherently the master and another group be inherently inferior, period. There are great people in every race. There are shitty people in every single race. It's just how it is, okay? But it feels real because of long periods of conditioning that we as a humanity have undergone, all right? And I think that one of the reasons why we can't slough it off is because we never fully, truthfully define what racism is. Me personally, I like Dr. Claude A. Anderson's definition of racism, and that is group competition for resources. Group competition for resources, meaning if one group has the ability to deny another group resources that they need to survive, they're going to do it if they have any kind of military advantage. And that's what's been going on all across time, all across history. It's just that recently, this competition for resources has had a color code to it, and that's what racism is right now, okay? Meaning, if we're not careful, we're going to run out. And that's the problem with this group competition for resources, that we're reaching the planetary end of what we can sustain. And so if this same group of people that's been taken, if they are allowed to continue, then we ain't going to have enough for anybody, and the whole system is going to collapse on it, including those who look like they're winning right now, okay? And if you really look closely at it, the war on nature, the war on feminine energy, and the war on indigenous peoples is all the same war. It is the war for control of potential, whether that be natural potential or human potential. And so how do we overcome that, right? Well, the first thing we have to address to get past that, unfortunately, is the elephant in the room, and that's white supremacy. Now, I know that we try to make this about everybody, but I got to keep it real. There was one group of people who had the musket, who had the smallpox, and who had the deception in order to pull all this stuff off, who had the ships and the trade routes to get this world the way that it is right now. The fact is that white supremacy was set up as a system to preserve the white phenotype, the white genome, meaning European traits like blonde hair, blue eyes, pale skin, thin noses are recessive. So when they're bred with other peoples, they become null and void. They become defunct, right? Now, the offspring is still, of course, human, but that wasn't enough for the elites who ran the world and had been running the world for so long. So they set up a system to privilege those traits, and everybody who did not have those traits really got shafted. And so overcoming that is tough because the people who are invested in it are willing to kill to protect it. And we haven't been able to figure out a way around that right now, because the average white guy on the street is not as invested in the supremacy of his race as they once were, let's say 100 years ago. But the elites have never stopped. And among all the vices like greed and being ruthless and being sociopaths, racism definitely would not be denied as one of the problems that they have as people. You see what I'm saying? That's a huge thing. But of all the things that white supremacy provided, it never provided white folks happiness. Like, it never provided peace of mind, it never provided brotherhood, and it never gave them the love. And it gave them a certain amount of respect, but that respect was based on fear. So actually, white supremacy on a fundamental level has been a failure to white folks, because it hasn't actually delivered on the final promise, which was a sustainable and happy future. You know what I mean? And so why do they still hold on to it? Well, the reason is because the next obstacle that has to be overcome, which is conditioning. The seeds that we plant into children's minds that blossom and become like those who planted it is a very, very huge thing, because human beings are so neurologically complex that we can be conditioned to act against our instinct, including survival instinct. People can be conditioned to become kamikazes and suicide bombers, right? And so if they can be conditioned to act against their survival instinct, they certainly can be conditioned to act against the ability to practice brotherhood with their fellow man. And it can look demonic when it's all said and done. I went to a historically black college, and I remember there was this huge debate among the revolutionaries on whether or not white people were human. And their stance was, well, if you was human, where's the humanity? Where was the stop button that said enough dead Indians, enough enslaved Africans, enough slaughtered Polynesians, enough butchered Polynesians, Tasmanians? Like, how come you didn't have a bottom to the depravity, right? And their conclusion was that they may not actually be the devil in fact, but they're the devil functionally to us, and we must resist them as if they were. My take on the situation is that to say that someone's a devil denies them their humanity. And to deny someone their humanity also denies them their responsibility. You see, a devil is not responsible for the actions because they are a program. They get to do what they do because they cannot help it. But human beings have the ability to choose and therefore can be held accountable. So it doesn't serve us to dehumanize white folks just because of the atrocities that have been done to us. But in the final analysis, the truth about it is that no matter what progress we seem to make, it seems that we get pressed back and put back on our heels, and the dream of a raceless world seems to be further than ever. But there was another dream that humanity had, and that was the dream of flight. For centuries, human beings looked at the sky and wondered what was on the other side of the clouds, and it seemed so unreachable, like we could never get to it, right? But somebody stopped dreaming and figured out the science behind how to make that happen. Somebody took the time and figured out the physics and the aerodynamics and ran the experiments and solved the problem so that all of us could look down on the clouds on a regular basis. Now 100,000 flights take off and land every day, and nobody thinks twice about it. But that was an incredible dream, right? And the same thing applies for a raceless world. Somebody has to engineer it. Somebody has to build it, because the world as it's designed right now, with the competitive nature of the whole human species, how we've been conditioned for these last 500 years of imperialism, is set up for racism to win. This world doesn't have to be destroyed, but it's got to be dismantled and repurposed to set it up so that all human beings can thrive. And all of those conditions that I talked about before, seeing race as an illusion, understanding that that there is a group competitive element to it, understanding that white supremacy has failed to deliver on its promise, and understanding that like we have to condition our children better, have to come into play to restructure a world that is there for all of us to thrive. So stop dreaming about a racist world and build it. Theo E.J. Wilson, that's my word today. Peace.